As the world's most elderly nation, Japan is dancing with a demographic disaster. People are living longer and birth rates are falling fast. No other country has a greater percentage of old people. The government has responded by raising taxes and the retirement age. It's even pushing for a robot revolution to support the greying population. I'm Drew Ambrose. On this edition of 101 East, we ask, how can Japan overcome its ageing pains?
The kitchen clock is my friend because good soba noodles are cooked in 50 seconds. Using expensive flour is key. My son makes the soba. I cook the vegetables and tempura. Working keeps me healthy every day.
85 years old and still dishing out advice from the kitchen. Sake Matsuzawa has run restaurants for decades. Her famous lunchboxes drawing customers from near and far. While her recipes are hush-hush, Sake believes Japan's low-fat diet and a sense of community are the secret to longevity here.
I sing karaoke, drink with friends, and enjoy nights out. But I actually don't want to live long. I just want to die without pain.
Sake lives in Nagano. It's a popular tourist city with shrines and snow resorts and one of the most active elderly populations in Japan. She, like many residents here, is living above the national life expectancy of 83 years.
My family tell me I'm a grandmother, so don't work. But I can't just stay in bed. I wake up earlier and start work before anyone else.
Aged 100 years old, Kasayo Shimizu is another local resident with no plans of slowing down. She's visiting her older sister, Kasaji, who's 103. Despite all these years, they're never short of conversation.
I think the secret to our longevity is good air. We live in the mountains, so the air is even better.
Kasayo is just one of over 50,000 centenarians in Japan. She's lived as a farmer here all her life and still weeds the garden. With her trusty cane nearby, Kasayo can do most chores unassisted.
I am not ailing anywhere, and I can still eat everything, and it tastes delicious. But if something bad happens, and I end up in heaven, I just hope my mother comes to pick me up.
Every day, Kasayo likes singing folk songs about the beauty of her mountainous home. But this landscape is the setting of a darker urban legend called Ubasute, an act where elderly parents were left to die by burdened relatives in tough times.
I heard that old people were taken to the mountains. It did not happen in our time, but a long time ago, I heard that elderly people were abandoned and thrown away there.
Times may have changed, but in modern Japan, the elderly population is a bigger burden than ever before. 23% of Japan's population was elderly in 2010. By 2050, that number will be 38%. The current government spends a quarter of its budget on pensions and social security for the elderly.
The current system of Japan or Japanese social security system, well, we must admit that the benefits are going to the elder generation, whereas the burden is borne by the working and young generation, and we find it unsustainable.
Japan's longevity, coupled with shrinking fertility rates, is leading to a rapid population decline. Come to the heart of Tokyo and it's clear this is a booming metropolis. But over the next 90 years, the population here could halve. In the world's third largest economy, the working age population is disappearing fast. Back in 1965, there were 9 workers for every retiree. Now, there's just 2.
The number of taxpayers is declining at a very fast pace. I think the gap between the taxpayer size and pensioner size continue to widen, and the fiscal situation will be under quite significant pressure.
Services for the elderly are stretched too. Hidenori Hashi's Tokyo Outreach Centre shelters men in distress. His NGO houses mainly the elderly, like this 93-year-old man.
He has chronic respiratory problems, so people think he should be in a hospital. But in Japan, you can only stay there for 3 months.
A trained psychologist, Hidenori Hashi says he is encountering more mental illnesses and personality disorders among his elderly clients. He introduces me to Mr. Kudo, one of the men living behind these partition curtains. With worsening dementia, he lives in delusion, fantasizing about a fictitious job and a family who visit. Other times, he's more in touch with a sad reality.
To leave here is difficult. When you reach a certain age in Japan, your job options drop. It's like getting cancer. Facilities like this help, but there aren't many. It's not that we want to be here, it's just inevitable.
The Japanese government and public see their longevity as a result of high living standards. 40% of Japan's social aid may go to the elderly, but Mr. Hidenori believes there needs to be a radical rethink of public services.
Even with government handouts, can an old man with dementia find an apartment? The answer is no. There's no safety net or facilities for the elderly. This government is slow at making decisions and can't cope with the aging population growth.
Since the 1960s, Japan's elderly have paid only a small part of their medical care through a universal healthcare system. Now, the increased elderly population is putting pressure on hospitals, with many suffering financial losses. Miyoko Miyazawa is a senior nurse at Isai Hospital, a private medical facility dedicated to the elderly.
The number of hospitals aren't keeping up with the elderly population. That's why the government encourages care at home. But if you get ill in your house, beds are full in medical centres, and many old people have nowhere to go.
Miyoko foresees funding cuts and staff shortages because of financial pressures on hospitals. She thinks the elderly should pay more.
I'm 65, so I can understand the pressures facing elderly people. I feel anxious and wonder who will take care of me if I get ill. I hope there'll be a care facility that feels like an extension of my home.
When she wakes up, I touch my cheek to hers to calm her down. I think I remove her anxieties. She can't speak with her dementia. That's why I use touch
to tell her I'm always right here for her.
Keiko Muramatsu has looked after her mother, Chinea, for over 13 years. When she started as a home carer, she'd work 24 hours a day without any support.
There were moments when I wanted to give it up. I have 2 brothers with wives, but I was the only person taking care of my mother. I felt I was the only person carrying this burden.
Her mother now uses a daycare service a couple of times a week, giving Keiko time to do the home chores.
The rhythm of your daily life changes. You accompany her at her pace, and your priority is to ensure she's secure.
With help from her adult daughter Fumi, they make early dinners for Chinea and keep her stimulated. She hopes Fumi doesn't have to care for her in the same way.
Before, I could go out freely, but not anymore. Fewer friends visit too, so carers tend to get isolated.
For men, seen as traditional breadwinners in Japanese society, the adjustments and pressures of caring drive some males to breaking point, even violence. Itsuo Kandatsu admits he abused his elderly father.
My father was severely depressed. He wanted to be beaten, and he would tell me to kill him. He'd find ways to make me angry. For example, he couldn't walk by himself, but when I was away, he would go to my bag and rip up my work documents.
Today, Itsuo is the sole carer for his mother. They go to a supermarket once a day, even if they don't need to buy anything, so she's less isolated. His mother refuses to go to a retirement home and is often moody, but Itsuo cares for her partly to deal with his own guilt.
It makes me want to kill myself when I remember what I did. When I saw my mother in a wheelchair at my father's funeral, I realized that from now on, I'll dedicate my life to my mother's care.
Many caregivers give up their full-time jobs. Itsuo works freelance and has lost chances to advance a once promising insurance career. Through this self-help group, he receives support and can talk about the challenges of caring.
Some Japanese men don't know where the dishes are or how to make instant noodles. Mothers change a baby's diaper in the families. So it's difficult for men like me to help parents go to the bathroom.
At 51, Itsuo remains single and sees the group as his only chance to socialise.
Elderly people living alone is becoming a problem. What can we do about it? I think I'll be living on my own. If my health fails, then I have to think about my options.
Today, an estimated 3.8 million elderly Japanese live alone. On the streets near Hidenori Hashi's outreach centre, many live in low-rent housing.
Many elderly people live alone because they have no family support. 30 years ago, sons and daughters would live with the elderly parents, but that's not happening anymore. Others don't want to be a burden on their children.
As part of his work, Hidenori visits lone elderly, hidden away from Tokyo's bright lights. One former client stands out.
When I looked in his house, his entire room was covered in brown reddish dust. He just ate miso paste and rice. What astonished me more was that he would scream, but he couldn't speak. Because he was not communicating at length with anyone, he had forgotten how to talk.
Tonight, he's visiting Mrs. Tanaka. Her son is in rehab for a drug addiction. Her husband had a stroke and remains hospitalised long term.
I'm lonely. I'm not used to being suddenly alone.
She's lucky to have Hidenori. Many lone elderly die and aren't found for days, weeks, or even months. Still, Mrs. Tanaka is worried about her dementia and declining health.
My legs and eyes are bad. I cannot walk far. I wish I had friends to have tea with. That's all I ask for. People do visit, but at the end of the day, they go home.
To address these emerging social problems, Japan is embracing new technology. This is Robot Week, a convention where manufacturers sell innovations aimed at an elderly market worth $1 billion a year. From electronic baby seals as companions to bionic legs that aid mobility. Big brands like Toyota are in on the act, selling these partner robots that fetch objects like a bionic pet.
We don't just make cars, we're using auto technology to help the aging live fulfilling, non-dependent lives. If families live apart from their elders, they could remotely support them using these robots.
Right now, the popular items are remote-controlled beds, tools and other gadgets that help the aging with household tasks. This device helps the elderly go to the bathroom, in a country where adult nappies now outsell infant ones.
Elderly people often feel uncomfortable with robots. This product is different. The machine naturally replaces the steps for using toilets and changing diapers. It's an extension of their everyday life.
The government hopes 1 million industrial robots could assist the Japanese workforce by 2025. But advanced technologies like partner robots are as expensive as sports cars and haven't attracted the elderly market. When it comes to developing this robot technology, there's still a long way to go. For an elderly person who's dependent on a partner robot, everything needs to be barcoded so the robot can recognise it. Battery life for these robots is yet to be determined, and if an elderly person is experiencing a medical emergency, they're quite slow to respond.
The challenge of these robots is the limitation of tasks. They can only pick things up and bring them to you. For the general public to use this robot, it needs to conduct more sophisticated tasks.
Boosting immigration could be one way to address Japan's demographic decline. Tokyo's Issei Hospital has accepted foreign nurses from Indonesia and the Philippines. But only 2 out of 11 staff passed rigorous language tests. Even supporters of immigration, like Miyoko, have their reservations.
Japan can't sustain itself without more foreign workers, but they struggle with the language and culture, and they don't always get along with local staff. Medical centres don't accept many foreign workers, so I'm afraid foreign nurses go to English-speaking countries instead.
To support the ageing population, the government is raising consumption tax by 5%. As the burden increases, that hike will double to 10% in 2015.
Out of 5%, 4% will be used to stabilize the current system. But at the same time, the remaining 1% will be used to enhance the social security system, which means that more benefit will be enjoyed by the younger generation.
Some economists applaud the measures, but say not every elder deserves such entitlements.
Well, the wealthier people should accept a cut in, benefits. That is almost inevitable. And in that sense, I think what we are saying is that Japanese government cannot continue to pay for all the people, all the retired people. So they have to be selective.
Japan's government is introducing a raft of new policies for the elderly to try and improve medical care, services, and prioritise the distribution of social security. They're also raising the retirement age to 70.
They can still make themselves a vital part of the economic activities. So I don't really think that the aging in itself is something we have to be pessimistic about. The important thing is that as long as they are fit and willing, we can provide them the opportunities to continue working.
Nobuhiko Hasegawa may be 65, but he still feels young at heart. Happily working as a guide at a Disney amusement park. Nobuhiko agrees with raising the retirement age and believes he could work past 70.
Many guests are around my age and ask me questions instead of younger staff members. They find it easier talking to me. After I gave directions to one senior couple, the wife told her husband, "This is your age. If he can do it, you can work too."
Nobuhiko says many elders can still contribute to corporations in their old age. With 40 years of hospitality experience, he guides younger staff through the rigours of professional work.
I think we learn from one another. The company instills discipline in staff, and I certainly correct younger staff on their manners. In return, I learn about the newest fashion trends from them. For example, clothing.
But some say raising the retirement age won't make much difference, and the Japanese government is living in a dreamland.
In reality, we do not anticipate the people above 65 years old would start working, more. I think, the people tend to want to retire at the age of 65. So direction-wise, policy seems to be right. But in terms of the effectiveness, we're a bit skeptical.
Increasing longevity is a sign of a healthy society. But by 2050, more than 60 countries will have large ageing populations like Japan. Now in her 60s, Keiko Muramatsu is coming to terms with the challenges of being a carer and an elder herself.
I try to let her do things she can do, so she feels less of a burden. She knows she has to rely on me, but I try to not let her think that way. I always thank her for being with me, thank her for staying well. She's important to me, and I'm grateful for her. That is why every day and throughout the day, I tell her thank you.